I'm back! Hello everyone, this is B. Harper from supermercy.com and welcome back to another film review. Today I'm going to be looking at 1973's masterpiece by William Friedkin, The Exorcist. Look, The Exorcist is one of the finest movies ever made. I didn't say finest horror movies ever made, I said finest movies ever made, period, because that's what it is. It was met with a lot of criticism. Upon its initial release, and I guess for good reason, because up until that point, nobody had seen anything like it before. They've never seen a film that pushed so many boundaries and, shoved the envelope right over the edge the way The Exorcist did. But it's not a film done with the view of simply to shock you, even though, of course the film shocks you. You have to appreciate, because back then, censorship in the 70s was a strange thing, because while you got quite a few great and violent and gritty films, there was still the stigma of showing you something on the screen that you weren't used to, and, as with most human nature, you tend to knee-jerk quite easily when you see something like that. So to see a little girl profaning and masturbating with a crucifix and spewing pea-green fluid and just acting insane, that was something nobody had ever seen before, and that's what got the film so noticed. But other than that, The Exorcist is a masterclass in filmmaking. William Friedkin is a very gifted director, and his career has spanned, quite a few decades. The man is supremely talented, and he knows how to tell a really good story. So The Exorcist started life as a novel by William Peter Blatty, and it was met, again, with a lot of criticism because of all the material in the book. But what elevates the book above the usual typical fare is that it's got a message to say. That is, demonic possession cannot always be solved by Christian means. Because the demon in the book and in the film, Pazuzu, is not a Christian demon. Pazuzu is a Syrian wind god. And, how do you exorcise something that cannot be exorcised? That cannot be exorcised through traditional Christian means. It's very confronting when you think about it, and that's what The Exorcist wants to do. It wants to make you feel uncomfortable. It wants you to feel unsafe. And the film emphasizes that by showing you just how dire Pazuzu can be. When you think about it, Pazuzu is one of the most reprehensible villains in cinema. And this is coming from somebody who loves their villainy, trust me. But what makes Pazuzu so horrible is that he is targeting an innocent little girl. And before his possession, we see little Regan McNeil, conversing with her mother and laughing and having a good time, and the film very quickly gets you on the side of Regan and her mother. And to see Pazuzu rip them apart like that and just have so much glee in it, the little fucker is sadistic, and the film paints a really good picture of what true evil is. True evil is not something you can relate to. It is not something that you can find, charm and charisma in. Pazuzu is a vindictive little son of a bitch, and the film makes no bones about it. It's just, the way it approaches the initial possession of Regan is very, very subtle, because before she starts to really display the signs of being possessed, like, being, bounced up and down the bed and, screaming in pain and stuff, you actually see some subliminal lenses in the film, or not lenses, what's the word, sequences in the film that shows the face of Pazuzu. It's either a very quick sort of pardon the screen, or you can see his face reflected in a surface. There's this one segment that takes place in a kitchen, and before any of the characters come into the room and, switch the light on, you can very vaguely see the face of Pazuzu in a reflective surface, probably on a stove or something, and it's these little touches that show you just how insidious Pazuzu can be. And finally, when he possesses Regan and when he starts to just wreak havoc on her body, it's terrible to watch. It's awful to see this lovely little character that you have grown very attached to in a very short amount of time just being put through the ringer. And it's not just Regan who's suffering, it is her mother. Early in the movie, you see that, Chris MacNeil is a loving, caring mum, and she's also a very hard-working one. She's a single parent. She isn't with her daughter as much as she would like to be, but, not through lack of trying. She does what she does in order to support her daughter and herself first and foremost. And, being an actor is a very sort of a nebulous profession, so she's constantly struggling, trying to find a way to keep her head above water, pay the bills, pay for Regan's schooling, pay for their food and all their basic living, arrangements. And to see her daughter go through this, there is no greater pain for a parent than to see your child in such distress. And if it's in distress that you can't help, that cannot be treated, it takes its toll on you. And Ellen Burstyn is amazing as Chris MacNeil. Like, it is one of the finest female performances in a horror movie, or finest, female performances in a movie, full stop. Burstyn has always been a marvellous actress, and her Chris MacNeil is vulnerable, she's strong, she's confused, she's frightened, but she still wants to help her daughter. Her love for her daughter, succeeds over everything else in her life. Same can be said for little Linda Blair. What a brave performance. Considering she was like about 10 or 12 years old at the time. I'm sorry, I get confused very easily. The fact of the matter is, you have this very young actress taking on this very ambitious role and just delivering this performance. Now, obviously, the vocal stuff wasn't actually hers, because that was a voice actress known as Mercedes McCambridge. She is the one who delivered all the really sort of satanic and guttural, orgiastic sort of vocalisms. But that was still Linda Blair flailing on the bed, screaming, suffering through this punishment that her character is receiving. A word on Mercedes McCambridge. I had never heard of this woman before, but when I saw this picture of her, she looks like, a kindly aunt, from the 1950s and that sort of thing. But here's this woman's voice, and to hear it come from this little girl's mouth, and just, oh God, it's disgusting, but at the same time, it is so compelling. The supporting performances are especially good. You have Max von Sydow as Father Merrin, and then you have Jason Miller as Father Karras. These two don't actually meet until very later on in the movie, but they quickly realise that they have to align their interests in order to save little Regan's soul. And the final exorcism part is one of my favourite parts in the movie. It is so chaotic, everything is just going to hell, and these guys have to remain strong while Pazuzu is saying all these things to them, making them see their worst fears and just, trying to exploit them, all in order to stay in the body of this little girl that it is hideously deformed. It's such a powerful scene, and it's just full of powerful actors just making the sequence work. And of course the way that the scene is directed and how it looks and how it sounds, that the music in this film is very subtle, but it is the type that gets under your skin, like a parasitic bug, like crawling through your veins, and you can feel every single pitty pat of his little feet. I'm sorry for that analogy, all of you folks who are afraid of bugs. I really do apologise. But that's the thing about this movie, is that it works on so many levels. It can be overt and it can be incredibly subtle, and you have those spaces in between. How Pazuzu works is that he or she, or it, I should say, manages to exploit your worst fears and make you see and hear things you don't want to see or hear again. In the case of Father Karras, it's his, emaciated, dying mother. Just to see this demon just playfully, cause people suffering, it is enough to really show you the high stakes in this movie. And everything else in the film is complemented by this. It's all just a very cohesive and wonderful picture. It's no wonder that this film has been marked as a classic. And yeah, it has its naysayers, but one of the main criticisms that this movie has garnered is the fact that it's too gratuitous. Well, for one thing, I'd like to say that the word gratuitous is used far too liberally and for the wrong reasons. Gratuitous means unwarranted. Okay, not necessary, not needed. In the case of The Exorcist, the violence and the profanity and just the overall sense of sacrilege is absolutely essential to bringing home to you just how, compelling this tale is. And it really makes you sympathize with the characters. Considering this is like a 2-hour or so movie, and a demonic possession is happening, you've got to make sure that you get the right actors and the right sort of feeling for the characters in order to feel sympathy for them. You don't want to feel sympathy for the devil. Pleased to meet you, hope you guessed my name. But it's just it's a balancing act that this movie succeeds on every level of doing. And people say that this film is dated. What? This film is not dated because it is timeless. I mean, yeah, the fashions of the 1970s, ring true here, but, other than the idiosyncrasies of the culture of the time, the story itself is incredibly basic, and it has been one that has been told time and time again, good versus evil. But in this case, the ending is left ambiguous. I mean, yes, little Reagan is freed from Pazuzu, but at what cost? Given Pazuzu is not a Christian demon, he is still sort of flying around looking for the next poor soul that he would like, or he, she, it, whatever, would like to inherit. It's just it's a very confronting movie for all the right reasons. And considering on Facebook right now, there are all these posts popping up of people's reactions to this movie, it's really no wonder that this film was able to get such a reaction, because they are being confronted and hit in the face with this stuff. It's remarkable. The thing is with horror is that more often than not, it decries or, it insults the social mores and the conventions of the time. I'm talking about the negative stuff. And The Exorcist kind of brings forth the fact that, Christianity is not always the hero. In fact, in the face of a much more powerful being, it is incredibly impotent. And although most of the characters that you love survive, there is no certainty for the future. And The Exorcist does that. So yes, that was my very quick review of The Exorcist, because the way I figure it, so much has been said about this movie, and for me to just go into familiar territory would have been absolutely redundant, because 1, you've probably already heard, or read, or seen it before. 2, this is just my opinion, and my opinion is pretty much that of most of the population who have seen this movie. Yes, it's harsh, yes, it's violent, yes, it's cruel, but it is absolutely essential as a film. It just goes to show you just how much talent can, be put behind and in front of the camera to deliver an astounding story that could have been crap on paper, that could have been yet another, horror movie, but The Exorcist just proves just how wonderful human ingenuity can be. And if you can get the right people, the right story, and just the right everything, you can make the best movie you can possibly make. And to those naysayers out there who say it's too disgusting and blah blah blah, this is offensive, don't watch it. It's as simple as that. But yeah, 5 out of 5. I can't think of anything else about this movie that hasn't already been said, and quite frankly, I don't know why I did this review. But if nothing else, I want to show my love for this film. It's about 40 years or so on, but it still packs the punch and has the impact that it initially had upon its release. And if a film can still harness and maintain that power, it is something very, very special. That was The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, starring Ellen Burstyn, Linda Blair, J. Lee Cobb, Jason Miller, and Mercedes McCambridge. See it if you haven't already, or watch it again if you have and you just adore it. Bye-bye now.